First of all, I want to get away from the dictionary definition of a constitution. A constitution must have purpose, and the purpose must be to create a nation that conduces to the greatest happiness of the greatest number of people. That is what a constitution must be. And having set the objective of the constitution, you then frame a constitution to achieve that objective.
Because we really do have a race problem. Those divisions are real. We see it in our politics, we see it in our trade union. We see that they take the divisions with them. Look at where people live in this US. You have enclaves in the Bronx and in Richmond Hill and in Brooklyn. They're taking the division with them.
Women are dying in the streets, and we have a government pontificating running around campaigning for women's vote. No women should vote in this election coming up unless there is something done to the legislation as Magistrate Kim is advocating.
That voices like ours that are not in the political trench fighting it out, voices like ours should become stronger. One of the things about the Caribbean is that we have never had one discourse. Bass will know the days of the New World and the Old World and the radical left and so on. What we had was this concourse of ideas, which I think in the early days of independence pushed us in a certain direction. We've got to move back to that point of having these multiple discourses.
A pleasant good afternoon, and thank you so much to our viewers for joining us. We are here today with Let the Women Speak, our segment for this month, continuation of the narcissistic personality. And my name is Diane Madre. We have with us in studio a good friend of mine, Robin Shea, who wrote the book Until You Die, The Narcissist Promise. Coming in with us all the way from Tel Aviv, Israel, is Revital. I must be saying this wrong again. Revital, right?
It's Revital Horowitz.
Revital Horowitz. Thank you, Revital. Who wrote the book, It's Just Your Imagination, and it's about growing up with a narcissistic mother. So we're going to talk about narcissistic personalities in relationships as a continuation of the last segment we had with Dr. Bindu Babu, who will be in studio shortly. Unfortunately, my speaker dropped here. So as we head into this particular segment, I want to thank you all again for joining us on Globespan 24/7. We just came off of the political segment with Charles Sagrim and Sais Narain Singh. So we're on this particular topic as we move into Domestic Violence Awareness Month, which was the month of October. And as we lead into November 25th is International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. So this topic is very important, the narcissist living behind the mask. So we're going to talk about relationships and how to begin to look at those kinds of personalities, whether it's a partner or a spouse, or in this case, one of our guests will talk about having a mother who is a narcissist. But as we go into that, I just want to acknowledge something that occurred apparently last night. There's a young woman within our community right here in Queens, New York. Her name is Donnie Dojo. 27 years old, was stabbed to death by her husband in an apparent murder-suicide. And for those who are following the news with these domestic violence murders, and we can see Donnie Dojo's photo on screen right now. So our condolences go out to the family and friends of Donnie Dojo. She's also working at an establishment here, Gemini Lounge. She was working with Gemini Lounge here in Queens. So for all the colleagues that may be grieving for this young lady, and to have such a tragedy at this time of the year, this reminds many of us who were tuning in of Stacy Singh, one of the young women that within our community that had died. So I understand this is the second domestic violence murder suicide in the city within the past week. The last one that occurred was on Wednesday, that occurred in Harlem. A man killed his wife and their 5-year-old daughter and himself on Wednesday. So this is the second murder-suicide. So it's very important as this time of the year progress. There's depression. So many emotions are going, alcoholism coming into play with these kinds of cases. So let's try to be vigilant and mindful for our family and friends in these kinds of cases. And I know right now on social media, this case is going all over in terms of news footage and within members of our community. So there are going to be some activism through the Jaji Sisters, Sadan, and some other groups that will be collaborating. So please look for that within the coming weeks, as November 25th is International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. So we will begin to recognize the 16 days of activism as we proceed. So as we continue with this segment now, The Narcissist, Living Behind the Mask, Part 2, we have Dr. Bindu Babu has just joined us, and I'm going to ask her to just jump right in. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Bindu, we were talking about, and I think Amita Kilawan, you were tagged. If you haven't seen it, there's a case within our community of an Indian woman. Devin, can we have that photo back on screen for just a quick sec? There was a young lady, 27, that was stabbed to death by her husband, the murder-suicide case.
Yes, I read that today. It's horrific.
Yeah.
Horrific.
So, and what I was just mentioning, this is the second domestic violence murder-suicide within the past week. So Wednesday, there was another one with a young lady, her husband, who killed himself by suicide, and hit the 5-year-old child. Oh, so there's 2 in 1 week, domestic violence, homicide.
Okay, I didn't know about that one. Yeah, that's terrible.
So it's happening. So this is the time of the year where these particular cases kind of escalate. So it's interesting, we're starting off like this with the narcissistic living behind the mask. And ladies, Revital, also Robin and Bindu, we can talk about seeing how we can bring this case scenario into like a case study per se. And Robin, you and I were talking about this earlier when I shared the article with you, because you've gone to Guyana, you've seen some of the outcome of working with women and domestic violence with the trip you had gone with me. So can you talk about, introduce yourself first, and then let's talk about that, the highlights we were talking about in this particular case.
Okay, thank you, Diane. I'm Robin Shay. I'm an author and a writer and a survivor. This is my book, Until You Die, The Narcissist Promise, and this is basically not only a story but a lot of clinical data woven seamlessly throughout the text. So people who are reading this who don't know about domestic violence and personality disorder, it's all in here. So in regard to this case with Donnie, is that
Donnie?
her?
Yeah.
Donnie. I was reading the article, and actually what jumped out at me was, according to the article, he was the coolest, calmest, funniest guy, and you see this so much in a batterer or a narcissist, and you don't know that that's really a red flag, because when they act a certain way but they behave a different way, it's really something to look out for and avoid.
Okay, great. So let's go to Revital Horowitz, who wrote the book, It's Your Imagination, Growing Up with a Narcissistic Mother. Revital, could you introduce to our viewers who you are and about your work with narcissism?
Yes, my name is Revital Horowitz.
How are you?
And,
good to see you again.
I'm currently in Tel Aviv and for a few months, and usually living in Seattle. I'm an author, and I wrote 3 books. I just finished my 4th. My 3rd book was actually influenced by my personal journey, and it describes some insights I managed to have during that journey, and some recommendations. And The book is called Just Our Imagination, Growing Up with a Narcissistic Mother, Insights of, sorry, I have it here somewhere, Insights of a Journey. And as Robin said, there is a mask and there is the real behavior. It's the same with parents who are narcissistic. You will never think that behind this very nice lady or behind this very nice man, there is an abusive person who abuses their children. My mom, even her siblings, didn't realize what's going on in our house, and her friends could not believe the stories I was telling them when I grew up. But as a kid, you don't understand that those secrets which you learn to use, they are not okay. And saying something bad about those parents, that's the way you are brought, not saying anything bad about your parent, but actually that's the way to control the kids. They don't go anywhere else. They don't ask for help. They don't say something is wrong in my house. They don't dare to do that because they are brought with brainwash to obey the parent and do whatever they want to do with you. So we are all here, I guess, to, reveal that mask and expose their true faces and tell the people, hey, look around you, look for the clues. If kids are dressed well, it doesn't mean that they are being treated well. It's not the same.
So we're talking about the narcissist living behind the mask, if you're just now tuning in with us. And we have with us in studio Dr. Bindu Babu, who was in our first segment. We also have author from Until You Die, The Narcissist Promise, Robin Shayne. We have coming in live via Skype, you'll see Revital Shiri-Horowitz, who wrote 3 books, but one particular one that sort of fits the topic that we're talking about. It's Your Imagination, Growing Up with a Narcissistic Mother. So when we're looking at the narcissist personality, we can see that these personalities can go from relationships with partners, spouses, to, as Revital spoke about a mother. So, Dr. Bindu, what are your thoughts on these kinds of relationships, whether it's a spouse, partner, or mother, or family member, because it could be a sibling as well?
My take on all the relationships is, number one, it's very difficult. Revital and I have done other programs together, and she actually opened up a lot of my eyes about families, because I work with a lot of clients, and it's very difficult when it's your mother or your father, because in toxic relationships, even if you brought awareness to people and you understand and you teach them, okay, there's a way of healing, there's a way of, one of the biggest mode of healing is no contact. So now you have family members. How do you have no contact with your mother or your father who is toxic to you? So this comes very difficult personally. It comes very difficult culturally, because even as bias, when you try to explain to somebody, hey, my mother is really toxic, I don't want to speak to her ever again. The lash of that from a third person itself has so much pressure, where you question your own judgment and you question who you are as a person and your morals. Like, am I being a good daughter? But then, is this really an epitome of what a mother should be? But we always have to remember all these words: mom, dad, brother, sister, husband. These are just labels. People are people. Even if it's your mother, mothers make mistakes. Mothers have their own insecurities. Mothers have their own jealousies and issues. And even though technically it's not correct, and how do a mother do this, the reality is you're a human being. You've gone through your issues. You've gone through your situations of insecurity, sadness, and things that you need to make ego and control might be what's the driving force to make you feel better. And the best person to really pick besides a relationship partner is your child. because your child doesn't know anything, and your child will always worship the ground you walk on. That's all they have is a mother. No matter what, a child will always love their parent. And this can't feed an ego anymore, because not only your ego is fed as a toxic parent, you can control and manipulate and actually see a child go in the worst way because you did it. Like, you're good for nothing. Oh, is this how you treat your mother? Look at you. You're a terrible child. I mean, you can really see that control and negativity. Oh, you're not good enough. Oh, you didn't do the grades that I expect you to be. You did not become an attorney like the way I wanted you to, because you are a horrific child. So it's very masterminded in childhood, where children do not have the education and wisdom as an adult to understand the difference. So when usually people figure this out is when they are actually in a relationship with other people, even siblings, where they notice that, hey, this is not the way a behavior is. Then you realize it starts stemming from a parent. And then now is, what do you do about it? Because this will continuously occur throughout your whole life, because this is your parent. And I think Revital is the best person to understand and explain that even more, you know.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because as we're talking about relationships, and Robin, with your book Until You Die, the Narcissist Promise, and your former husband, so if we can take it back to the familial side, because as you said, Bindu, I didn't think about it until we started talking about it, how it can play a role within that familial level. So, Revital, could you go through that with us in terms of the familial side of a relationship with, you know, parents, and how that can play a role as it transition into the personal relationships, you know, women or anyone would end up in?
I find that if we don't realize what's going on, and a narcissistic mother is not just a mother who makes mistake. It's an abusive mother. It's a person who's not empathic. She doesn't care about anyone but herself. She manipulates people against her own child. She manipulates siblings against each other. It's like they're into each other all the time, because she manipulates all the time, and she lies. She lies about her children, to her own children, to her extended family. So she will be centered of everything, and she doesn't care about the results and about the pain she causes her own children. When a child like this grows up, they start hanging out with people. And what I saw is that you get attracted to the people who feels like home to you. So who feels like home to you, if not people who are a little similar to your parents, right? And if you don't, and I think that if you don't go through a process of understanding, of mourning the childhood you never had, of finding your own authentic personality, of establishing a new way of behavior, or a new way of finding people around you. If this doesn't happen, you're going to continue doing the same mistakes. You're going to raise narcissistic kids. You're going to abuse your kids if you don't understand what's going on here. You're going to marry an abusive husband or wife. It's really crucial. This show is very crucial for people to understand that they need to look around and realize who are the poisoning people in their lives. Even if they're the closest one, they have to do something about it. They have to understand that, and they have to protect themselves and start healing themselves.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. So if you're tuning in with us now, you're joining, my name is Diane Madre. You're here with Let the Women Speak and our guests in studio, and Revital coming in from Tel Aviv, Israel, talking about the narcissist living behind the mask. So as we speak about this topic and talking about family and about the mother, Robin, can you talk about your book in terms of the narcissist promise until you die and that being a partner? So when you talk about growing up, you know, like Revital talked about her mother. So now with your husband, your former husband that you wrote your book about, can you talk about that, how that could be transitioned and maybe have created the person that he became?
So this is shown in a lot of narcissistic sociopaths. The seedlings of narcissism develop when they're very young. So basically, to go back, a baby gives love to their parent, and if they're not getting that love back, they've got to find it someplace else. And they're constantly looking like a little vampire for their narcissistic supply. So that's how the narcissism begins. In my book, my ex-husband was actually adopted. He was the first child. They had been trying to conceive. 7 years later, they adopted him. Well, a couple of months later, all of a sudden, his mother, his adoptive mother, is pregnant. So she did get pregnant. She had 2 daughters, and those daughters were favored. And he went to find his follower, so to speak, because he was such a narcissist. And he could never find enough, because a narcissist is always trying to replenish that supply. So when you're looking for people who you want as your followers, you're going to pick people who will put you on a pedestal. So you're not going to pick the president of the class. You're going to pick the dregs of society, the ones who like when you steal from a store, the ones who like when you find frogs and put firecrackers in them and blow them up. This is what he did. This is also what the abusers do. Alan Blackthorne, for example, an abuser. They're cruel to animals. And then this just escalates as they become adults. And the behavior doesn't change. It just gets worse and worse.
And I'm glad you came to that point, because Revital, when you and I had our conversation about coming on the program, we talked about, and I know we had discussed this, Bindu, on our last segment, can narcissism be cured? So Revital, can we come back to the conversation you and I were having when we were talking about it, and you mentioned about your husband,
Right.
and in writing the book?
So narcissism is a normal, it's a trait, right? There is a scale. We are all narcissists in one point or the other. We're actually talking about extreme narcissism. So extreme narcissists will never cure, never ever. Even if they went for treatment, they're not going to go there to get really help. They're going to go there to to have somebody else be the guilty one, and they're trying to again make that hole in their heart to full, but they will never admit that they did something wrong or they hurt anyone. They will always manipulate everything around what they want it to be. We have that in so many areas, and also, of course, in couples. When I married my husband, we were very, very young. Both of us came from troubled houses. My husband came from a neglected, abusive family, and I came from a family whose my mother was always the center of everything, and I was, I don't know how to call it, the black sheep, or I don't know, Cinderella, or I don't know, Snow White, something like that. So I think for us to build relationships was really complicated. First, we felt like we were survivors. And yes, there were lots of traits of narcissism in our marriage. And we had places where I didn't know where it's going to go. But my husband and I, we made some changes every time we reached a point where we thought that that's it, that's the end, we're separating. We made some changes, and I saw a lot of willingness to change and fix things and do things better and differently. So, and in that case, I think that if you marry a narcissist who is not on the extreme, there is hope. There is hope, and there is something to do about it. Yes, go to therapy. Yes, do everything you can to save your marriage. Yes, but if there is somebody there on the other side who will try and have you look like you're crazy, who manipulate everybody against you, who will cause you to be isolated from your family and friends, then hey, run away as soon as you can. I hope that answers your question.
All right, thank you. Bindu, what is your take? Because I know we talked about this before. Can we highlight that again? Because I remember your response when we were talking about, is there a cure?
Oh, there's no cure.
And then Robin, you could.
Yeah, there's no cure for narcissism. I mean, a narcissist is a narcissist no matter what, and it's a personality disorder. And one of the main reasons why there's no cure for this is because they don't recognize that there's anything even wrong. They're fine. There's nothing wrong with narcissists. A narcissist doesn't believe they're wrong. They always, any action that occurs that could be toxic is your fault, not their fault. You made me do it. You have issues that made me teach you a lesson, or you made me treat you this way, and I really didn't want to because you acted out. Meanwhile, you didn't do anything. You just most probably didn't do their bidding. So narcissists will never accept that they did anything wrong. They think they're God's almighty created in the earth, and for them to recognize something is wrong is when you look for treatment. So it's impossible. But I mean, you have different, see, the thing with narcissism, it comes under a personality disorder. It's, DSM-5, and you have all sorts of mixes. So you have sociopaths and borderline personalities and narcissist personalities, and these all kind of intermingle a lot. And so if you're like a sociopath, yeah, you need the attention, but then if someone really kind of points it out to you, you will somewhat look at it and be like, okay, maybe I can do some therapy and help it out and maybe alleviate the symptoms or the signs, but you're still a sociopath. So even if a narcissist kind of comes to a point where, okay, I do see certain things that I'm, because I'm not accurate in, and you try to if they do even have treatment, it's impossible, because you're sitting with a therapist and you end up fighting about it, because a therapist will point out things that might be negative in you, and you will usually act out and walk out. I mean, that's just the way it is. They can't take criticism at all because they think that they are perfectly fine. So whenever someone else criticizes them, they're going to lash out because they're going to be like, no, you're wrong, and they feel weak and they act out, and kind of like what you said about the frog, and it's horrific. They will do anything to get their attention. So no, narcissists cannot be treated, cured. Yeah, not at all.
Robin.
I think the frog part, that's more of the antisocial personality disorder. I worked at McLean Hospital, which is one of the largest psychiatric hospitals in Massachusetts, and Harvard educated. And one of the clinicians there, Martha Stout, she wrote this book called, I'm sure you've heard of it, The Sociopath Next Door. And she talks about how the personality disorders can merge, for example, the narcissism with an antisocial personality disorder. And when you have this merging of the personality disorders, it makes for a very dangerous individual. Now, I'm sure everyone knows Diana Downs, who was the mother in Washington State who took her children in a car and shot them. All of the interviews, she was more concerned about herself, how she couldn't tie her shoe, and she was the perfect compilation of narcissism, antisocial personality disorder, as well as histrionic personality disorder, which means she just loves the attention. So you can have a narcissist that can be just really annoying, and the clinicians would find them
being too kind with the term annoying. Annoying can't be. That's being nice. You're being a nice
I'm
person.
trying to sort of differentiate, put them all in their categories. But the clinicians at McLean would say, I love working with narcissists because they're so fun. And they are. They're fun, they're charming, they're outgoing. But they're yeah. But they're nasty for the most part. So and it's unfortunate because some people see this great person and it's like, oh my God, they're so wonderful, they're so charming, but they're really so bad and so unhealthy.
So we're talking.
And they use people.
Yes. Go ahead.
And they use people. They use people.
Oh, absolutely. They manipulate.
They will be nice to you, and then the purpose of being nice to you is that something will come out of it for them. It's never really about you. It's about them.
Yeah, I mean, to add to that, you're right. It's never about them, and it is to use them, because it's not just being toxic, or we're not even just talking about domestic violence or physical violence or mental abuse. We're talking about draining people financially for support, or trying, because you're talking about people who will do anything to keep their relationship together, and they look at it as, well, let me not support my partner. This is how they're manipulated. Or let me try to do my best to keep this together because on the hope of their potential to come through. And they're drained in every avenue: career, finances, everything. It's not just the mental and physical abuse. We're talking about complete detrimental trauma to a person's soul.
And if you find the courage to leave a narcissist, boy, does that get them angry. And basically, they wonder, how can someone leave someone as wonderful as I believe myself to be? Therefore, they need to go after that person and do whatever they can to destroy them.
Robin, I'm glad you touched on that. Can you go back, because I know we talked about this and it's in your book, Until You Die, The Narcissist Promise. The name of the book, which ties into what you just said. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, when I was looking for a name for my book, one of the clinicians at McLean said you have to get something that's going to grab people. So I had to think about the whole situation. And I remembered a phone call that was prompted by my mother. Why don't you just call him up and ask him how long he's going to continue to harass you? I was already remarried, pregnant with my fourth child. And I called him up and I said, how long are you going to continue to harass me? And he said to me, for the rest of your life until you die, which really was very, very shocking to hear that. And yeah, he's trying really hard to keep that promise, but I've become very strong since leaving him.
Good for you. So as we continue and let the women speak until, I was going to say until you die, the narcissist promise. I thought about that one first. The narcissist living behind the mask. Such an important topic, as we all know, looking at it from a clinical perspective. But let's begin to break it down. So ladies, with all of you here discussing this topic, if someone is tuning in and not understanding the word narcissism or narcissist, how can we break it down for particularly young women or young men that might be in relationships that might look like this? What kind of advice would you give to them? Bindu, coming from a therapeutic perspective, what would you say?
Recognize the red flags. Number one. Stop ignoring them. Stop making excuses for the red flags. I mean, it's understanding that, even if you see the good in a person or you feel like they love you and fill the void within you, understand that the only void that could be filled within you is by you. And that takes a lot of work, a lot of understanding of who you are, a lot of inner core connection, inner core being. I mean, it takes a lot for that, but when you're in a relationship, you should understand that you're your own entity, and if someone treats you in a terrible way, or if someone is giving you the red flags where you notice they're becoming either overly possessive or they're becoming controlling of who you speak to, what you're doing, where you are, they're starting to question every decision you make, and even question your own integrity of who you are as a person, where they may insult your personality or what you believe in. recognize those flags, because you are more important and valuable than the other person and how they treat you. Don't be used as a tool to fill their insecurities, or don't allow someone to treat you in a terrible way, because you need to understand that you're worth it. I know there's a lot of times where people are in situations where, yes, you have children. Yes, you have financial obligations. How will you survive? Yes, also there's just simple things of, I don't want to be alone. Nobody likes to be alone. But understand that, you have to kind of sit down and think to yourself, treated terribly where you don't know where you are, or take the help you can get and get out. Live your life. You only live once. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to be in peace. You deserve to connect to yourself and embrace your surroundings and embrace life. Life is not meant to be with somebody and live a tragic life. I always say in my seminars, we can't be just born to be someone's child and then grow into a teenager, then go to high school, then get married, then get a job, then buy a house, and then feel accomplished, and then die. Is that what life is meant to be? Is this what it is? Or is that dictating a social norm? What about you? What about your happiness? What about what fulfills you, what you want to live? These are the universal choices for you, and it's meant to be lived. So when you're in a relationship like that, understand people don't change. Nothing you can do can change them. Only they can change themselves. And first start is yourself. Get out. You deserve more. And there's plenty of people out there who will support you and love you and care for you, your children, your family, and set you up. We have a lot of resources. If not, call me.
Thank you so much, Bindu.
I would like to add to that. When I was writing my book, I knew that I was going to have to be speaking about it, and I wanted to feel that I had something behind it. So I went and became a certified domestic violence advocate. And when you talk about domestic violence, where does it start? It often starts, as you said, with a young person and someone who wants to control them. And imagine the high school girl with her boyfriend, and he wants to know, where is she all the time? You have to check in with me. What are you wearing? So this is control. But to the high school girl, she thinks it's love. Oh my God, he loves me so much. He wants to know where I am all the time. He wants to make sure no one else is looking at me. And then it escalates. So it's not just...
Even older. I
have to older, say, right, exactly.
Even not only high school, I'll tell you, I fell for it and I was in my 30s. So, I'm telling you, 20, 30s, and I was in it. Like it's, you think, you recognize these things as, you think it's love, but it's not.
Right. Yeah. And my ex, which is in my book, he used to tear off what I was wearing if he deemed it inappropriate, or throw me outside because what I was wearing was inappropriate, or the window was open.
And you believe it's your fault.
Right.
At that moment, you actually think you did it. You did something wrong. You're so manipulated in that cloud of the that you actually believe it is your fault. Maybe you didn't dress right, and this is why this happened. And how can I avoid this? It's terrible.
Okay, thank you, ladies. And Revital, what are your thoughts on that?
I want to add something that has to do, two things I would like to say. First of all, I'm going to speak about children of narcissistic parents. The fact that you are a child of a narcissistic parent doesn't mean that you need to sit in that hole and let everybody think that you're a good kid. No, don't stay there. You're not supposed to stay in a place that is abusive to you, whether you're a teenager or even an older person. A little kid will not know what to do, but an older person needs to understand that it's not their fault, it's their parents' fault, and you don't need to take the abuse, and don't stay in those relationships. And one of the hardest things for people like me is the fact that when we talk about our experience, people look at us and say, really? But this is your mother. She only wants the best for you.
Right. How
come you think she wants something not as good as you think she wants for you? And I always, it always feels like a stab in the back, but I always stand for a second and I hold myself and I start explaining. But not everybody can do that. No. And to the people around us, listen, you have to understand, not all mothers are good. Not all mothers are supportive and loving. Some mothers are sick. They're narcissistic. They're not like this. They will abuse their daughters. I can give you an example of me as a teenager going to shop with my mom. I would try things on and she will look at me and she will say, oh, you have to do something about your body. You look terrible. You have to do something about your body. So if you hear those things, listen, you're okay. Your body is perfect. Your mom is a cuckoo. You have to understand that. It's not your fault. Do something about it. And don't care about what everybody else says. Care about your own feelings. It doesn't matter how it looks like. It matters how it feels like. And the other thing I want to say is regarding the fact that 3 women were murdered in Israel in the last 2 weeks, I think. 3 women, really, one of them is really young, a mother of a baby. One of them is a 70-year-old. The one with the baby, she was a social worker. I mean, educated. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter how educated you are. When the first hit comes, there will be a second one. When the first abuse comes, there will be more of that. This person is not going to change. It's you who needs to change.
Yes. You know, and I'm so glad that you're talking about that, Revital, because when we're looking at about the young women that I mentioned earlier before we start that were killed in these situations, especially the one that I talked about that got killed last night, right here in New York, right in the community where we are right now. And, you know, what she might have been thinking, trying to get out of a relationship, you know, what kind of partner she's been involved with, you know what I mean? So, and with young women that might be getting into a relationship, because had she known the kind of partner that she might have ended up with, would she have gotten married? So when we're looking back at earlier relationships, you know, would you have done something different, Robin, in your case scenario with your husband, former husband?
Had I known that he was like, you know, when I met him, he was just so vibrant and interesting, and every day it was something new, and travel and excitement, and all these people telling me how wonderful he was, and for him to be wonderful and pick me, it made me wonderful too. So it's really hard to differentiate the charm that and the excitement and the exhilaration of this kind of relationship, especially when you're young and it's like, I want to get married, I want to start a family, and it's like, you know, oh, he's fine, there's nothing wrong with him. But the thing is, if you know, perhaps if I had been a little bit more independent in my own personal life, maybe I would have seen signs of it. I know for sure that if my father had been alive, then that marriage never would have happened.
Right. So, and your thoughts on?
You know, it kind of tears me apart when I think about it, because sometimes I'm like, did I really need to go through so much trauma? Because it was, and personally, it was such a eye-opener and a shocker. And, you know, we hear about these things like in the news or in the books, and when you're actually in something like that, and especially if you feel like you know better, it kind of sits there and it settles in your stomach like, wow, did this really happen to me? And then you sit there and think about it, well, I wish it didn't. But then I'm like, I wouldn't be who I am today if I didn't go through it. I wouldn't be sitting here now understanding this. And you know, I don't think I would have done my PhD for sure. I wouldn't have pushed myself that hard if I didn't want to do it for others. And I'm talking about women, men, children, everybody, because we have to kind of stand the ground, because yes, you bring awareness, and we've talked a lot about awareness, and we talked about the characters, and we talked about the symptoms of what the other person has gone through, and all these signs. But then there's this whole thing called healing. And that's the most important part. I mean, okay, you leave, you do no contact, but then you have this whole post-traumatic, syndrome that goes on after it, that's so complex. And then how do you come out of it? I mean, sometimes when I even hear my ex's voice, like, it triggers, and then I'm like, oh, now I'm in a better place, because I do different tools and work that needs to be done to heal. And that's where I have dedicated my life to. You need to meditate, you need to connect to your inner core, and there's this whole science behind it, which I've learned, which is epigenetics and positive reinforcement and thinking, and these things help. And the number one thing is forgiveness, and that's hard for everybody. We look at forgiveness as, well, if I forgive this person, they're getting away with it. I'm saying, hey, I forgive you, it's okay, let's be buddy. No, that's not what forgiveness means. Forgiveness is when you say, hey, you did wrong to me, you were hurtful, you were obnoxious, I did not deserve any bit of it. And even if I had some part, because eventually what happens when you're in a toxic relationship, you start screaming back and going into hysterics, or some personality that you've never had before, because you're in defense mode. And maybe you did something, but hey, even if I did, you put me through this hell, and you know what, it was wrong on your part. I forgive you, not for you, I forgive you for me. I forgive you because I don't want the resentment, I don't want the anger, I don't want all these negative energy that's inside me towards you to ruin and stunt my life. Because I want to be happy, because that's what I deserve. I deserve love, I deserve happiness, I deserve compassion, I deserve peace. And to do that, I forgive you. And you go on in your life. I wish you well. I wish one day you get your happiness or whatever you need to do. But this is about me. And that whole weight goes off your shoulder, your perceptive things change. And it does, it changes scientifically, it changes your cells, it changes your brain cells. There's so much Harvard studies behind epigenetics. Dr. Bruce Lipton, who is one of my colleagues in the professor that university I teach at, which is Quantum University. I mean, it's a whole new study of quantum physics. And if I can utilize that with my coaching practice to help with energy work and Reiki and healing, hey, let me dedicate myself. So I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't go through that process. And I guess this was my life purpose,
Thank you, Bindu. And I'm glad we're on.
Can I add one more thing?
Sure, certainly.
Bindu, the process you're talking about is extremely important, but I would like to add one more thing that is crucial. When you do that conversation, you don't do it with that person who abused you, because he's not going to be empathic. You'll do it in the therapist office, or in front of a friend, or in front of even an empty chair.
I agree.
People don't really understand. There is nobody on the other side.
Yeah, no, they'll never give you your closure. No, you're right. Let me emphasize, when I meant forgiving the other person, generally in my practice, I make them write letters. I go through this whole tool where you have to write letters. You never give them that letter. That's for you. You're forgiving them for you. You're not telling them, hey, I forgive you. This is about your relationship with you and healing within yourself, and to move forward so you can learn to love yourself and what you deserve, so you don't repeat these patterns of codependency or whatever issues are. And I thank you for bringing that up, because I didn't realize, because I was so into the conversation. Yes, you can't do this face to face with any of them or give them a letter. This is you and your relationship with you. I agree. Thank you.
All right, so as we continue the conversation with our guests and Dr. Bindu Babu, our therapist in-house today, the narcissist living behind the mask on Let the Woman Speak. Again, my name is Diane Madre. As we are closing off on this segment, I want to talk about, and this sort of fits right in, Bindu, about what you're saying, about healing and recovery. And I want to come to you particularly now. If you can just briefly talk about, someone might be tuning in, or might see this broadcast after. And by the way, for those people who are tuning in, this segment is coming live to you right now, but it will be broadcast again on Tuesday night, because we will be moving to Tuesday after this Saturday. So if anyone thinks this is a segment that would be interesting for someone to hear, please share. It's very important. Dr. Bindu Babu is based here in New York, and her services are available. So we're going to talk about healing and recovery and looking at the type of therapist or coaching that someone could be looking at. So can we start with you, Bindu, about looking at therapy versus coaching, and how could someone make a decision as to what might fit their need in recovery and healing?
You need both. It depends on the person. Like when usually people come to me, male or female, and they come and they sit down, I don't take on everybody because I need someone who is ready for moving forward to heal. What are the tools we're going to work together? It's very quantum based. You sit down, you make a relationship with someone, and then I put my full energy into you to help towards tools to go for a healing process. But if there's more work, when I sit with you and I realize, okay, there's some inner child work, there's other reasons for codependency, those things you must go to a therapist. You need both in certain clients. And then there's some clients who understand where they're going, but they keep ruminating. Why this happened? What did this happen? How did this happen? And this is where we do a lot of mind reprogramming, mindsets, of positive thinking. Why this happened? Understanding. And, I'll give a small example, and I'll say to Revital, it's hard when it's a parent. And I think it's when you see your mother, you're like, well, you're not supposed to do this to me, you shouldn't have done this to me. And a lot of times with my clients, I sit down and it's a quite extensive process, but I'll always say, I start off with saying, well, you have to understand, you have to forgive your mother, because we don't know what your mother went through in her life with her parents to get her where she is, that this is all she knew as a coping mechanism. It's unfortunate. This is all she knew. There's nothing she could have done any better, and especially maybe it's cultural. It's what she's learned from her parents, her grandparents, her great-grandparents. A lot of these things are genetically lined down into different lineage. And if no one's taught her, she's going to do the same thing because this is what worked for her. And this is how they do a coping mechanism, and she's going to continue to do that. And unfortunately, this is her life, and I don't know if she's very happy in what she did or if she's still in a happy place inside within herself, but this is what it is. And we can't, whether it's a mother and whether it's a label, this is who she is, and this is how she treated the child. And forgive, let go, and move forward, because she didn't know better. And these are how we do certain tools of understanding, and we move forward. So with coaching sessions, it's just what I do is moving forward, is understanding different perspectives, healing, and moving forward. But you need therapy when it's much deeper reasons for a person to accept this behavior from someone.
Revital, let's come to you on that in terms of healing recovery, because in our conversation you talked about dealing with a lot of individuals, especially in Israel. You've done some lectures and stuff in Israel and spoken to families and so on, right? So can you touch on the healing and recovery in, with the areas and families that you've worked with on this particular topic?
When I understood what's going on, I was handed by a therapist. I saw a book that was written by Dr. Karen McBride. The name of the book is Will I Ever Be Good Enough? And it's a fantastic book that will explain to you, daughters of narcissistic mothers, what it is, how it feels, and give you the healing process that is based on I think it is based on the AA 10 steps, but it's a little bit different model. So I actually worked on that, and I met with Dr. McBride one-on-one, and then I went to a workshop with her. By the way, Bindu, in that workshop, we were like 8 women from all over the country, different cultures, different ages, different backgrounds. Narcissism crosses all cultures.
Oh yeah.
all ages, everywhere. It's not a cultural thing. It's not a country. It's not a country. I mean, it's all over the world. I'm sure it's in every culture. I'm afraid it's everywhere. It's so scary. It's everywhere. So for me, one of the scariest thing for me was that my mom, when I started my healing process, she turned the extended family against me, and I thought I was left with no one besides my kids and my husband. And I was heartbroken. Yeah. But slowly I discovered I was really wrong. That's really good news. There are people who do see what's going on, who do see the manipulative person and what they're doing, and who loves you no matter what. Right. And they will always love you and will be by your side. So that was actually one of the best news I've learned in that process. And I have very close relationships with my cousins, and I have great friends that are still my friends. Yes. And the only thing that has changed is me. Yes. Because I learned how to put boundaries. I learned how to stop my mom from manipulating me. And I know that she's still trying to turn people against me. So the people who were listening to her, okay, that's their problem. Some of them are actually my siblings. I don't keep in touch with my siblings for the last 7 years. I don't talk to them.
Yes, I
She turned everybody against everybody.
Right.
So Revital, how can anyone tuning in find your book? So this particular book, it's just your imagination growing up with a narcissistic mother. How can someone find your book?
It's on Amazon, it's on Barnes and Noble, it's on all the big websites. You can download it, or you can order paper copies. It's everywhere. You can also find it on my website, www.revital.sh.com. And I'm always there for people who need some ideas and help and support. And I've been helping women all over the world with their problems, and I'm so happy and proud I can do that.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you so much for the work. Thank you for the work that you've been doing, especially with the women in Israel as well, and across the globe. And Robin, so in terms of your book, can you talk a little bit about that as we close off? Your healing and recovery. Your own personal healing and recovery.
I think my own personal healing and recovery was basically to take on the challenge that he presented to me when we were together. You'll never make it on your own. You'll never be able to pay your rent. And back, I was a stay-at-home mom. I wasn't working. I do have a college degree, but I hadn't been working in 8.5 years. So I started working, and I was excelling at my job. And I found a small apartment, and I was paying my bills. And as of today, I'm a homeowner. I own a house. Yeah. I have a job. I have a daughter who's in college and graduating in June, and I'm doing all this and helping other people who are in my situation. And I know how futile it feels when you're going to court every day and you're being beaten down in court, and what it feels like. And are you ever going to heal? Are you ever going to recover? I don't need to say I forgive him. I just need to say I support me, and I can do it, and I can be strong. I don't need to bring him into the picture because he didn't do it. I did it. So right now with my book, and again, you can get this on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. I'm trying to create a a stage play with my book, a little bit different than the book, because I do have a quote therapist, Sigmund Freud. I'm sure everyone has heard of him, and he's a character in my play, and it's going to be a little bit interactive with the audience. And the purpose of bringing my book to stage, I want to create an environment where you can really see the narcissist up close. You can experience the charm as well as the anger of the abuser, and hopefully will encourage women to speak up.
That's terrific, and I'm glad you mentioned, because I almost forgot, mention about the play that's going to be, that you're creating it from your book. So we have someone in our studio audience, Chitra Singh, who I want to introduce you to, because Chitra does music and
Oh, great.
has done production and stuff, so it might be a good connection for you guys.
Yeah,
So
thank
we
you.
can speak to each other after.
Awesome.
So, so as we're coming to a close, I want to thank everyone for tuning in with us on Let the Woman Speak, The Narcissist, Living Behind the Mask, Part 2. You know, we can continue to have these conversations ongoing over and over again. And as you heard today, in this conversation, we've seen how narcissist personality can be developed in a partner, spouse, or even a family member, as Revital spoke about in terms of her mother, and the healing recovery, how important that is. And Dr. Bindu has mentioned about how important therapy is, even alongside with coaching. And that's a new form of, what would you call that in terms of coaching?
Well, I do quantum-based transformational coaching.
Okay.
Yeah, more of a holistic methodology.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, and with new programming and stuff like that, things are coming into play that people are balancing therapy and coaching and so forth. So it's important for women, men, or anyone who might be experiencing a partner or a familiar person in the family that might look like this, what we've described here today, and to begin to see how you can move forward. Because I think with our women here talking about experiences and the growth and the development from it, it clearly shows that one can heal from this type of environment. So again, I want to thank Revital for coming in all the way from Israel on Skype with us. I know it's late, so I hope you had a wonderful day, and thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we'll get to see you when you step back into the United States, right? So we'll connect with
Shalom, Laila Tov.
Very inspiring. You are inspiring and
You as
strong,
well.
and you
Well, to
care
get-
about women, other women. That's great. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, and I appreciate the conversation we had earlier in the week and bringing you on to the program in short notice. And thank Bindu for connecting us. And this is how we do it: women empowering each other
Thank you, Peter.
and standing with each other.
You were
know.
fantastic. We've done a show before, and
Yeah.
you really opened up my mind a lot about parental narcissism, and you had such great I really appreciated you. And so when Diane came, I said, "Oh no, you must."
And I was lucky. I got her this week, so this was like terrific connection. And you're there doing your PhD in Israel, so I want to wish you on behalf of all of us and Let the Women
Narcissism.
Speak.
Narcissism. That's what I
Yeah, exactly.
Of course.
So I'm wishing you all the best on your studies, and please let us know when you're back in the United States so we can connect with you again. And hopefully we can probably take this into a different level through Let the Woman
That would be
Speak.
great.
And Bindu once again, I'm like, you're like my soul sister.
Yes, we connected.
I'm my
Thank
other
you.
soul sister in the audience here too. And Robin, it's so wonderful connecting with you again. So even though we have not been in touch, you've always been in my thoughts. And thank you so much for going to Guyana a few years back and doing that journey through 1 Billion Rising project we did together, and coming back in here. So for those tuning in, these books are available. So Revital Horowitz book, It's Just Your Imagination, Growing Up with a Narcissist Mother. You can find that online, Barnes & Noble, and other sites. Also, Robin Shay's Until You Die, The Narcissist Promise. That's coming in the form of a screenplay. So hopefully we'll hear from Robin again about that. So again, thank you everyone for joining us. Oh yes, how could I forget? Thank you so much for reminding me. Bindu, I'm going to let you share that. So as we're connecting with our women in terms of doing phenomenal things, we try to support each other. So Bindu has an event that's coming up in December that we want to show our support. And it's important also for me because it's about cancer awareness. And I lost 3 family members to cancer. So it's important for this recognition and the event that you're going to be having. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'll just say briefly, I'm part of an organization. I'm actually Director of Leadership Academy for New American Voters Association, based here in New York. And we're doing a very huge and beautiful Winter's Gala in December 19th, Thursday at 6 p.m. And it's a fundraising event where we're going to collect toys for children of the homeless and the Cancer Center, as well as the proceeds will go for the Children for Cancer Center and the homeless children who during the holiday season. So it's a beautiful event. It's going to be lots of fun. There's going to be auction, fashion show, all sorts of events, and we have a lot of elected officials who's going to come support us during this time. And I'm very, very excited. I cordially invite you all to come support this event, support this charity, and let's have a beautiful time
Did you
together.
say where this event is?
Yes, it's at World Fair Marina.
Right here in New York. In
Yeah,
Queens.
World Fair Marina, December 19th, Thursday at 6 p.m. Come support our organization, NAVA, New American Voters Association, for this wonderful Winter's Gala and fundraising event for the children.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in again. And
Thank you, Diane.
thank you so much, Revital, and have a beautiful rest of the weekend. Ladies, thank you both for coming in. And Robin came all the way, drove down all the way. So this is what you call dedication and support from Massachusetts. So, and I want to thank everyone. Thank those, Robin brought a friend that drove down with her. So thank you so much for bringing Robin with you, and appreciate it very much. And so we're looking forward to everyone on our next segment. This will be rebroadcast on Tuesday night. So please share this as we move into this November month, into International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. We just lost another woman yesterday. Let's try not to, raise the level of awareness so we can, I keep saying, support each other and minimize the deaths that we have, especially this time of the year, holiday seasons, especially when children are around. It's not a good thing. So again, thank everyone for tuning in to Let the Woman Speak. My name is Diane Madre, and I appreciate it to our tech, Devin, for supporting us and putting this all together, and Globespan 24/7. Please tune in on our next segment. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.